All right.
So are you going to just have me up there and Derek?
Let's have everybody shut off their videos.
Yeah, you go to your upper right-hand corner where the three dots are, you click on that, and then you just go hide video. So I'd like to welcome everybody to our virtual service recognizing District 5010 Rotarians who have passed in 2019-2020. Thank you for joining us. I'm Andre Layral, your district governor for District 5010 for 2019-2020. It is with gratitude that we are all gathered here today to recognize several remarkable Rotarians. I'd like to begin by recognizing Lieutenant Governor Rosie Ropel for work played this year as Lieutenant Governor. I'd also like to thank Pastor Derek Dickinson of Journey Christian Church for agreeing to help us today with this celebration of life for these amazing Rotarians. Derek was previously a Rotarian in my club, Fairbanks Sunrisers Rotary. The format today will be for Rosie to share slides on the screen. Pastor Derek will lead us through the service, and I will handle the introductions and such for the recognition of the Rotarians. When we come to that part of our program, I will ask if there is a representative of the club who would like to briefly speak about that Rotarian, their vocation, how they served their Rotary Club, and the impact they made in their community. It may be as simple as a brief story, something they were known for in their club, or an anecdote about them. On the screen will be some bulleted points about their life. The club representative may hit some of those points, or they may choose to share only a brief story that demonstrates the Rotarian's commitment of service above self. The service is expected to last about 45 to 60 minutes, and I would like to ask that all of you shut off your video. It'll only be Derek and I that you'll see, and Pastor Derek. And Rosie's recording this. And if anyone in your club would like to see the service on their own, then there will be a link for that. And I'll be muting myself, as will Rosie, unless we've got a bit part. So any of you that is asked to talk, you'll just unmute yourself and go ahead and begin talking, or Rosie can call on you if you raise your hand. So let's get started with Pastor Derek. Take it away.
All right, let's begin with prayer. Let's pray for everybody here. Dear God, we just lift up the families of each of these Rotarians. We lift up their Rotary clubs in the loss of these remarkable members. We ask for your comfort and encouragement at this difficult time. We thank you for these individuals and how they have lived out the ideal of service over self. And we thank you for the honor of knowing them in the different particular clubs. I just ask your blessing on our time together in the name of Jesus. Amen. And at this time, I'm going to read Psalm 23, which has comforted many over the years. It simply says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." And so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Andre, and he's going to lift out the different individuals who have passed, and we're going to hear from some of you.
So, Rosie, you may have to flip some slides back and forth, but we're going to begin by recognizing Arnie Iverson, who was a charter member of Ketchikan's First City Rotary. And I would like to invite anyone from the club who is prepared to say a few words about Arnie to go ahead and unmute yourself. And could you please state your name so that we know who you are and what club you're from, and then you can say what you would like to say.
Yeah, hi, this is Mary. Could we skip right now and let, Dick is still trying to get on and he'd really like to read. Could we just skip one, try it? Would you mind terribly?
We can
Rosie?
do that, Mary.
Okay.
So Rosie, let's go
Otherwise,
on.
he's still trying to get on, and if he can't get on, then I'll just go ahead.
So let's go on then to Gary Thomas. Gary Thomas is a Paul Harris Fellow from Homer Kachemak Bay Rotary. He was born in 1951, and he's been a Rotary member since 1987, longtime Rotarian of Homer Kachemak, a past president, past secretary. And I'm going to ask if there's anyone would like to speak to Gary from Homer Kachemak Club.
Yeah, Andre, this is Tom Early, and I would like to speak about Gary. I'm really honored to speak about Gary. As you said, he was with Homer Kachemak Bay Rotary and Rotarian for over 30 years with our club. And as soon as he joined our club, the tone of the meetings just changed dramatically with his vibrant personality and communication skills. And as one member stated, and as many members knew, he was a master of the unexpected. He served as president and several stints on our board of directors, and as you said, secretary, and several other things. And he was always an active Rotarian. Anything he was asked to do, it was always done well. And he was the epitome of service above self. One example of his humor, if I might go into a couple items here, happened this fall as he supervised our annual health fair, and which draws over about 1,000 people from our little community of Homer. People can get their blood drawn for lab work several weeks prior to the fair day and avoid the long lines which used to exist. Rotarians register people at the hospital door to draw their blood. And it so happened that one day last fall, the blood draw came on Halloween, and Gary came dressed as Dracula. So that was quite a hit for a lot of the people, or scary for a lot of the people. And another story, it was in the past when Gary took on the role of club president, he had to find someone to serve as treasurer. This is a pretty funny story. He recruited someone by telling him that it would be a pretty easy task. The gathering was set following the next club meeting in the parking lot to pass over the treasurer's paperwork. And they met by their cars, and Gary opened his trunk, and there filling it was a pile of boxes, papers, and envelopes, all related to the treasurer's work, which hadn't been done too well before. Gary looked at this individual and casually stated, "Good luck." Gary was also a man of many talents. In the community, he was best known for his auctioneering skills, and he was often recruited in this capacity to raise money for charities, nonprofits, and the like in our community. His sense of humor and oration skill generated a great deal of money for these organizations. And our club also gained a lot from this many times. Once he auctioned off a pair of well-worn, extra tough boots for several $100s to benefit our scholarship fund. He was also a member of the Homer Volunteer Fire Department, and at 40 years of service there, he was the town's longest serving volunteer firefighter. He also was recognized as a very competent fire investigator for the state. Gary was one of the first general managers of our public radio station, which, by the way, recently and officially named their on-air studio as the Gary Thomas Studio. He was a business manager and publisher of the Homer News from the late 1990s until 2005. It's difficult to say enough about Gary and his contributions to Rotary and to our community. I can only say that if we could be like, or only half like Gary, the world would be a much better place. Thank you. You're muted.
So the second slide there on Gary contains some of those things, and we did have noted there that just Saturday, I believe, the Kachemak Bay Broadcasting named the studio the Gary Thomas Studio. So that's wonderful. And I want to just thank Homer Kachemak Bay for sharing Gary's life with us today. So let's go back to Arnie Arneson. And Mary, if you'd like to introduce who's going to speak on behalf of your club for City Rotary.
Yeah, this is Mary. Dick is having issues with it. He didn't apparently get the email. Never mind. Okay, Arnie, what a great guy. Date of birth was 12/23/1929, and he passed January 17th, 2020. Arnie's daughter, Lori Northrup, had this to say: "My dad passed away just 3 weeks after celebrating his 90th birthday. He had a full life, commercial fished, joined the Navy, retired from the Ketchikan Pulp Company. Then he became a partner and an independent insurance agent for the Palmer Spalding Insurance Company, retiring for a second time 17 years later. He was proud to have 4 daughters, 10 grandchildren, 16 great-grandchildren, and 2 great-great-grandchildren. He adored them all. His high school yearbook says Ketchikan High School named him best dancer, most popular, best mixer, and best all around. He was also the best dad my sisters and I ever could ask for." Lori continues to say, "We will always remember him for his generosity, wonderful sense of humor, positive spirit, and unconditional love for his family." So some of you may know Arnie was one of the founding members of First City Rotary. The charter document says that the club was official in August 1998. I seem to remember the charter members separated from the Ketchikan Rotary 2000 to start the first club in Alaska that allows women. And I spoke with Margot Miller, Dick's wife, Dick was just not trying to get on. She said that Dick was sponsored into Rotary by Arnie. Margot also had this to say about their good friend Arnie, that they had a close friendship. Arnie was a faithful member of Rotary and was a strong proponent of Ketchikan. He was just a good man, just good to the bone. Dick says that he remembers Arnie enjoyed making root beer floats for our community members during our annual 4th of July Rotary Duck Race. Scott Brand Erickson, he's another member of First City Rotary, remembers this about Arnie. He says, "One of our routines for several years at our club meetings was to ask Arnie for a weather report. He invariably said that we expect a moist flow of maritime air with some precipitation possible." And I remember that as well. He pretty much said that all the time. That's what we have for Arnie. Good guy.
Thank you so much, Mary. So Dick's not joining us then?
He was unable to receive, I forwarded him the email of Rosie's, and he did not receive Rosie's email yesterday. I tried to walk him through the Zoom procedure. He already had it loaded, Zoom loaded, but he couldn't find the number.
Well, that's fine. If you could thank Dick for being ready to go, and I'm sorry he wasn't able to join us, but I know it means a lot to Dick. So
They're
thank you.
really good friends, yeah.
Okay.
So one of the really cool things about Dick is, and Arnie sponsored him, and Dick is our head Golden Hammer. So I just want to put that in there. So thank you, Arnie.
So now, Rotary, Rosie, would you take a minute to explain what a Golden Hammer is?
Well, we have a group of people in our club that love to build things. They like to run heavy machinery. They love to run saws. They love to dig holes and make dirt, put in concrete, and build playgrounds and put in carpet and do all kinds of things. So we not only have men in the Golden Hammer. Mary, who was just talking, is one of our Golden Hammers too. And I'm one, and we all show up and we help build the stuff. So they kind of keep the club going. And we like to build, we're a club that builds things. So our golden hammers are really important.
Thank you for sharing. So let's go on to the next slide, Rosie. And is Mamie Brown on yet? Okay. Mamie was going to join us. I talked to her this morning, but I'm not hearing her. So I'm going to go ahead and just introduce Bill Mendenhall. Bill's a longtime member of Fairbanks Sunrisers Rotary. He was a charter member in 1986 when our club was formed. The thing that really stands out, not to mention that Bill was just 3 weeks shy of his 97th birthday, is just what a curious mind he's had since he was a youngster. And he excelled in academics through his whole life. On his 90th birthday, just to give you an example, Bill had left a Rotary meeting early so he could go complete a test so he could renew his engineering certificate. So he's a lifelong academic, if you will. He worked for the University of Alaska Fairbanks civil engineering faculty from 1955 to 2005. He's received emeritus recognition. When he was young, they said that he was the third worst punster in his high school, but he graduated at the top of his class. And anybody that knows Bill knows that he loved to tell a good story, and he loved to tell puns and things. And you never know what was going to come out of his mouth. But what really stood out for me about Bill was he was a trivia fanatic. We would sometimes start off our meetings with some trivia questions, and Bill and Bart LeBon are the two in our club who I would consider historians. And often it was fun to see Bart might know the answer, but Bill would school him on some minute detail about that piece of history, and it would surprise people how much he was a student of history. When Bill was up at the university, the students loved him because he could break things down in engineering and do it in a language that was simple to follow, simple to understand. And he dedicated a lot of time to service for his students. He said service to students is all about dedication. And he lived that in the 50 years he was at the university. He's also the last surviving member of the Greater Fairbanks Community Hospital Foundation, and he served for 50 years of board service on the hospital foundation. There's a student travel endowment that's named after Bill at the university and the engineering department. There's a classroom that's named after him, and the engineering program started an endowed scholarship named the Bill Mendenhall Engineering Scholarship. So that shows how much he was loved. He was inquisitive and patriotic. Bill had he was known for carrying a laminated American flag in his wallet. And whenever we would be displaced for a club meeting because we had to move venues at one of our meetings, Bill would always reach into his wallet and pull off that laminated flag, and he would hold it as high above his head as he could, and everyone would cite the Pledge of Allegiance. And if we were in a regular meeting and Bill was asked if he would lead us in the pledge, he would always leave his seat. He'd walk to the front of the room, he'd grab a corner of the flag, and he would pull it out for its full length, and he would begin citing the Pledge of Allegiance. But he often ended up standing behind the flag, so nobody could hear, or nobody could see him, but everybody could hear him. And he always had a smile on his face, as you can see with the picture. That was a couple of years ago, I think in 2018, when I came into a meeting. I came up to Bill and said, "Good to see you." Shortly before that, he had lost his wife, and he came to the meetings still, and just everybody loved Bill. So those are some of the things about Bill. I could go on, but I won't. But really a fine Rotarian. So Rosie, okay. So Craig Johnson, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So Craig is going to recognize 3 Rotarians from Kodiak, from the Kodiak Noon Rotary. So I'm just going to go ahead and let you go in the order that we have here, if that's okay with you, Craig.
It certainly is, Andre. Thank you to you and Lindsay Knight who brought this to our attention. There's a couple others on here, club members and community members that might pitch in on one or more of these, but I don't think anybody better than me could talk about my dad and his time in Rotary. Dr. Bob was a Rotary lifelong member. I don't think we have when he started, but he returned to Kodiak after medical school in 1955. And it would have either been then or very shortly thereafter that he joined the club, where his dad had been active for years and was a 2-time, not only president, Dr. A. Holmes Johnson, but he was a district governor for the district. And Dad was considered for district governor, didn't serve in that role, but Rotary was very high on his list, maybe the highest point of where he felt like his time was best spent to be a friend to Kodiak and make Kodiak a better place to live because of Rotary's community service ideals. And, I cannot think of many doctors that I've seen that have been active in Rotary. And oftentimes when doctors are, they can't make meetings regularly. Dad and his time as a practicing physician here for 40 years plus, didn't miss Rotary. I mean, there probably were a few times that he missed, but he was one of those that would either have, if not perfect attendance, close to perfect attendance year over year. And on his schedule, noon on Tuesdays was Rotary lunch, and he didn't miss it. In Rotary, he was famous for music. He's a doctor, yes, but he was a jazz piano player, and he arranged a lot of music, entertaining music, community songs and plays and musicals and such. But he would, if some of you old timers remember songs like Viva la Rotary, Dad would sometimes bring out a Rotary songbook. If a program were to cancel, he was quick to grab that Rotary songbook. And most of our club would be rolling their eyes at Dad bringing out a Rotary songbook from the I'm thinking 50s, maybe earlier time frame. But he loved music. Whenever there was a birthday and someone paid for a birthday, he would be leading the club. And he would, even into his 80s, he would jump up on a chair. And I would sometimes have to slide a little close to him for this jump up onto the chair, because he was going to be directing, with like leading an orchestra. He was going to be leading the club in Happy Birthday. And he would usually, pause or, somehow make it a little bit out of, change the timing a little bit, speed it up, or cause us to hold a note, and people would oftentimes miss it, and he would correct, and we would have to go back to getting it right. He was married to my mom, who's still living for 67 years. He passed in January at age 94. He had 4 boys. I'm the oldest of 4. He was the program chairman, not only for a season or a term, but he's kind of like the program chairman for life. Lindsay Knight has replaced him as the program chairman for life, but it was an intimidating job to take because he did such a good job, took it so seriously. He had introductions and bios. He considered a proper introduction very important, and someone who would just flippantly say, we're going to hear from Alan Schmidt on our Rotary Foundation, that would just not cut it for Dad. He wouldn't like that. He would want to have some bio and a proper introduction for any speaker was high on his list. And if he did an introduction, it was exemplary. It was one to set a standard on. That about does it. I can see Nancy Kemp's name on the list and a few others. It might be good to hear from someone else about Dad. He would, you see it on your screen, Dad, especially when he was hard of hearing in the last couple years, it would be unusual for him not to correct a speaker at the club with regard to the proper use of the microphone. And oftentimes repeatedly, even during the program, if if I was speaking and I had the microphone to my mouth, he would signal to put it on your upper chest and hold it still. He was a fanatic for the proper use of the microphone. And we all kind of have to put up with it a little bit, but you just didn't argue with Dad on that subject because he was usually right and you kind of had to get in line.
So if there's anyone else who would like to comment about Dr. Bob, now would be the time to do it.
Yeah, I'd like to just say a couple words. My name's Max Floyd, and I'm from Kodiak, born and raised from Kodiak. And I just want to say how much the community loved Dr. Bob. I love Dr. Bob. The Floyd family loved Dr. Bob. He actually delivered me in the hospital there just above the Russian Orthodox Church, right by the oil tanker containers, and that hospital's still there today. But I just, Dr. Bob was one. My dad, we'll get into that later, but Dr. Bob loved the arts in Kodiak, and especially one outdoor drama called The Cry of the Wild Ram that told the story of the founding of the area around Kodiak and other just intriguing stories involved with that whole early Russian settlement times, and he would be involved with the recruiting of just actors and actresses in the city to be involved with that, and I always look forward to seeing that every year. So I just want to say how much we've all appreciated Dr. Bob and the entire Johnson family and what they've done for the community of Kodiak. So thank you so much.
Thank you. So any other comments about Dr. Bob before we go on to Joe Floyd?
Yes, this is Nancy Kemp, a good friend of Dr. Bob's, and he was in the same Rotary Club as I. And I must add that he was all about peace, world peace. And he quite often told us about the Rotary University, I think a couple of universities that had a specialty for students to become world peacemakers. So that's all I'd like to add. He's a great guy. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. That's the Rotary Peace Fellowship program that you're referring to.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Let's, Rosie, go on to Joe Floyd from Kodiak.
Andre, we have some people that would like to say a couple of things about Bill. So I'm going to go back to Bill.
Okay, before we go on to the next one. Okay,
Yeah,
was that
great.
Paul?
So in the chat, we have people that have written things. Can you guys just tell what you wrote? Mike Paulin and Joe Kukley, etc.
Hi, Mike here. Yeah, I just shared on the chat. Back in 1969, I took a surveying course from Bill Mendenhall. It was the first opportunity I had to meet him, and what an impressive instructor. Great teacher. He commanded the respect of everybody, from students to his peers in the college and throughout the industry, the engineering industry in Alaska. And I remember on the last day of the class, or the last week of the class, he had a gentleman from DOT come in, and Bill introduced him, and he started handing out job applications. He says, if any of you guys are taking a course from Bill Mendenhall, that's all the resume you need, and we'll hire you. And for the next 2 summers, I worked as a highway surveyor, thanks to Bill Mendenhall. And then later on in life, it was quite a privilege to be able to call him a fellow Rotarian. So I did comment, and one additional comment on that. I think God needed some engineering work and called him home.
Thank you, Mike. Joe Kukley, did you want to say something?
Just I mentioned in the chat, he and Nancy were just a force to be reckoned with here at Fairbanks, and that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Joe. I didn't see your comments in the chat box, Mike, at the time that I went through Bill, so I'm glad we came back to it. Okay, so Rosie, let's Joe Floyd.
Wait a minute, Craig had something to say too. Craig Bledsoe.
Oh, well, same thing. I was just typing some reminiscing about Bill in there. We worked, of course, as fellow engineers on several pranks that made the News Miner, and most of them, at least in Fairbanks, are fairly well known. For those of you who know Gary Slutty, the dentist, we pranked him with a huge rock drill that we stuck sideways into the big molar that he had or has on his sign there along the highway. And took shoe polish, painted it black, and to show what kind of drilling service you could get at Saudi dentist office, and that one made the News Miner. There was another one involving an overpass being constructed at Badger Road, where a Mount Everest summited with oxygen masks and the whole works. And then on the back page, it showed them all adjourning to the Chinese restaurant at the mall down the hill. But the picture was quite spectacular. It looked like they were on the summit of some undiscovered mountain. In fact, I think it was labeled Alaskan Team Summits Mount Badger. It was a huge spoils pile from the construction project. We had a lot of fun.
Thank you, Craig.
And Peggy.
And Peggy had a comment, I think when we were talking about Dr. Bob. Peggy?
Yeah, that was Dr. Bob. And in 68 and 69, living in Kodiak, which I called my home, even though it was only 2 years worth, played in the choir of the Wild Ram. I was a drunk native one year and just a kid the other year, but had a lot of fun. And it really depicted the history of the time. And I believe he was like a director.
So Peggy, can you still do the Cry of the Wild Ram?
No, they don't do it anymore.
Okay.
Not politically correct, but I do have 2 copies of the original screenplay, or, the actual words of, everybody's parts in the play.
Yeah, Peggy used to live in Kodiak, so I'm not surprised that Dr. Bob was known by everybody in the community.
Yeah, no, I call it home.
Okay, Joe Floyd, Craig, you want to go ahead and speak?
Yeah, I'm ready to go, but I'd really kind of like to stand down and let, I know Max would say something, and the son who mentioned my dad just a minute ago, but all of these gentlemen, these Rotarians, are Hall of Fame Alaskans and Hall of Fame Rotarians. And while we could be intimidated by the group, Coach Floyd and Dr. Bob deserve to be in that group, because from 1955 till the present, they were dedicated community servants and principals in Rotary during that time. Dad was in medical community, of course, but also the arts and music in Kodiak, where he was the father of this historical drama, The Cry of the Wild Ram. Joe Floyd was in the schools. He was a coach and athletic director. He was also a champion of all youth sports and activities. And it's hard to get anything else named besides Joe Floyd. There's a Joe Floyd tournament. There's the Joe Field Ball Complex. There's the Joe Floyd everything. It's just because of no one stood taller. He stood head and shoulders of everyone. But let me stand down and let Max first, please. And then if anyone else wants to say, and I'll wrap it up, okay?
Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah.
Max.
Yeah, thank you, Andre, and for what a well-organized event this is. And I feel honored to be invited to listen to these stories. I've been feverishly taking notes and learning the stories of each of these shoulders that we're all standing on now. And just a little bit about my dad. I'm Joe Floyd III. So Dad was Joe Jr. And then there was another one. There was Joe Sr. that lived with us. Their roots was in Mississippi, and they moved up in the mid-50s. And I was born in Kodiak along with my younger brother Scott, and then Patrick, and my oldest sister Virginia. And so the one thing about Dad is that he really desired to make a difference in the youth of the town. He There was something about, he knew it was a working town, just like Anchorage, Fairbanks, Ketchikan, these other places, Juneau, all across the state. This is a working person's state, and Dad knew that. But with that, a lot of these youngsters needed things to do, and so Dad would have have that gym open early, keep it open late. He'd have programs, summer programs, evening programs. He had, Craig can comment on, and I've talked about before, something called intramurals, intra within murals walls, sports within the walls of the school for not the elite varsity star athletes, but for the everyday Joe and Jane. And Dad knew that they needed something to do, and they needed to have, be active, because oftentimes that investment of their own families were out making ends meet, and so Dad would keep them busy. But he loved it. It wasn't a have to, he loved it. He loved getting up early and staying late. As I shared in his memorial celebration of life back in February, he invited lots of folks to his dinner table. But the one thing about his dinner table, it was a very unique dinner table in its shape. It was shaped like a pool. It was shaped like a gymnasium. It was shaped like a baseball field. It was shaped like a track, but he invited all these kids to his dinner table so that they could have a sense of accomplishments, a sense of participation. Participation was really the name of the game for him. And so we all kind of enjoyed being in that house. There was no choice. We were going to be involved with activities whether we wanted to or not. It was thanks be to God, we were all fairly gifted in sports and continued and going as far as we could with that. But Dad was a great encourager of that. He would spot people with their talent and tell them, you need to try out for such and such. One story, a guy by the name of Duncan Fields, he ran for office this last year, but he's a commercial fisherman and an attorney in town. And he noticed that Duncan had kind of that grit, that toughness. And he said, you need to try out for wrestling. And sure enough, over the years, he got to where he was a spectacular wrestler and ended up runner-up in state, got beat by some guy down in Juneau, I think, in his senior year. But anyway, Dad spotted talent and would always recruit and get people to believe in participation and have a place rather than just for the elite athlete. I could go on and on. Obviously, we called him in our house kind of the leader of the band, and actually loved to think about how he led us and not just the Floyd kids, but all his kids that came to that dinner table that he conducted day in and day out. But I miss my dad, but I look forward to trying to walk in his steps. I've got some big shoes to fill, but I'll be doing my best to contribute in whatever way I can in very similar fashion. So thank you, Rotary, for he loved being a part of that. And when he'd come down to where I live now here in North Carolina, we'd visit the local Rotary and stay involved in that way. And he always supported that and believed in it. So thank you for all that you're doing. And I love the service over self. That's basically the story of Dad as well, the story of all these men and women. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Max. Anyone else want to comment on Coach Floyd?
Andre, I would just say that he very active in anything that our local club had to do with youth scholarships and such, but he was the one who got us involved in the highway cleanup. We've adopted the highway near the airport here in town, and that highway needed a lot of work, and that continues to this day. That highway is much improved because of his vision and leadership, but also our club's follow through to keep that going.
Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so we've got one more from Kodiak, and not sure who's speaking to Jim. Is it Piotr?
It is Piotr, Andre. and I'm glad to see that he's included. This is Craig again. I could speak to him. Is there anyone else ready to do that, Alan, or is this on me?
Go ahead, Craig, and we can
Okay.
have the others add
Okay.
to it.
When we realized that Dr. Bob and Coach were being recognized, it had slipped through the cracks that we had not mentioned Jim Piotr. Jim Piotr, great sense of humor, longtime Rotarian, always a twinkle in his eye and a bounce in his step. He was a principal at the middle school, involved in the school system for years and years and years, involved in our club for many years. He would be a little bit of a jokester. He would be quick with a comment. He would particularly pick on anybody that was in the school district. They were fair game, as was he, but it was always with the greatest respect that he would pick on, say, a superintendent or a principal or a visiting teacher that might be at our club for some reason, maybe to be the program. He would needle them, but always in good humor and always with respect and admiration, never demeaning or self-promoting. That just wasn't him at all. In his later years, he long retired. He would be visiting the senior center for lunch. He would often ride a little miniature motorbike, like a 38 cc, less than 50 cc scooter. And I mean, he wasn't little, and I mean but he would be bombing around in the town, and I mean it looked like it could be dangerous. It could be an accident. As far as I know, there never was an accident, and in Kodiak you could get away with that. But Jim, just as far as Rotary programs, I'm sure he was involved in our scholarship work. He was always involved in our telethon, which is our main fundraiser, and our duck race. If Rotary was doing it, Jim was involved in a leadership role.
Andre, Diana Holt has a thank you for sharing stories about Dr. Bob, Coach Floyd, and Jim Piotr. They were all missed and greatly admired. Thank you, Diana.
Thank you, Diana. I was talking to you, but I was muted, so my bad. Okay, so we got Steve Schreiber next to talk about someone from Russian Jack.
Okay, I'm on now. I think with Dr. Rogers, the thing is that it didn't matter what he did. I mean, there's a lot of things on here: his flight surgeon, his pathologist, small plane pilot, working in the Navy. I mean, you could list them. You know, I probably forgot a couple. But Don was always, always talking to and with people, and not just the fact that he would talk with you, but he would ask you about, you know, what you were doing and how your family was, and he'd bring up different things about them. And he was just a good guy, a good conversationalist. We used to sell raffle tickets, and we'd be at the Sportsman's Warehouse or outside of Cars or the gun show or whatever, selling these raffle tickets. And it seemed like everybody knew Don. There was no getting around that. It just didn't take long for someone to walk up and start talking to him about whatever, planes, guns, fishing, you name it. He would be just engaged in a conversation with people, or just about what was going on with them. We had we do a lot of donating materials to other organizations, and one of them is we gather wine for the American Cancer Society. Well, Don would call people and say, "Hey, are you going to donate this year?" And they're longtime friends, and they would donate a case of this, a few bottles of that. And at the end of it, he would have donated 200 bottles of wine or more to the American Cancer Society. And at their fundraiser, a lot of those bottles would go for, everyone went over $25 a bottle. Even if you bought a $7 bottle, it would still just be raffled up. And a lot of them were hundreds of dollars. I don't know how much he raised. He always knew people that could help out. And if we were ever doing anything, he would say, oh, let me call so-and-so. And sure enough, things would happen, things would get done. We went to his memorial service, and I sat there for hours while people would come up to the mic and tell Don stories about things he's done for their family, things he's done for the community. Hours of people just coming up and talking for 5 minutes about Don. So I just can't say enough about him. And we certainly miss him at our club, and we will miss him in the community.
Thank you, Steve. Is there anyone else, Steve, from your club that wanted to say something about Don?
I didn't see anybody on the list. I don't know.
Okay. So have we missed anybody? Rosie?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, let's go on to the next piece here. And so this is a response prayer. I'll be reading the line that says leader, and Rosie will be reading the line that says people. We're going to ask each of you to be sure that you're muted. And when Rosie is reading the people line, if you guys will repeat it, but on mute. Otherwise, we will sound not so synchronous. And if you've ever done the Pledge of Allegiance on Zoom with a crowd, it's not pretty. So we're going to do it this way. So I'm going to go ahead and start. At the rising of the sun and its going down,
we will remember them.
At the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter,
we will remember them.
At the beginning of the year when it ends,
we will remember them.
As long as we live, they too will live.
For they are now a part of us as we remember them.
For all the good they have done, for the wisdom they have imparted, for the times they have shared, for the giving of service above self,
we will remember them.
Thank you. So, Pastor Derek.
All right, I'm just going to share a few thoughts. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, a couple verses say, there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. This is a time to mourn, to remember, to celebrate some remarkable individuals. I only knew Bill from Fairbanks, but he was an incredible guy, and the others just sound amazing people. When I think about a life, I kind of think about, when you go out to a pond and you throw a rock into the pond.
From Dr. David Stieber. Home, press Ecumenical phone button to answer.
When you go out to a pond, you throw a rock into the pond, there are ripples that move out from that point of impact. And every life has that impact. And there are these ripples of influence and service and kindness and love. And these individuals all have had an incredible impact. When we have a service like this, when we have a memorial service, there's a couple things we're trying to do. We're trying to celebrate a person's life. And I think you all have done an amazing job of doing that, to just really honor them and to celebrate them, to remember what the impact that they had on you and your community. Another purpose of a memorial service like this is to begin the process of grief. Some were very close to these different individuals, and grief is a process. And so there are different stages of it, and I'm not going to unpack them all, but and go into great detail, but there's denial. There's, when you think about a joke or story that Bill would love to hear on Friday morning, and for that moment you forget, and you're like, oh, I'd love to tell that, and you can't, and it's just like you block it out for a moment. Sometimes in grief there can be anger. I don't know all the details and all the stories. Sometimes people suffer at the end, and they have different medical issues and challenges, and I've met many people who struggle and are angry about the difficulties that someone faced, maybe even angry at God, and that can be part of grief. There can also be real sadness in grief, and it can hit you in waves at different times. You know, if you had a regular time, like your Rotary meeting, or maybe, you know, at the next service project, and that person was always there and they were right next to you working, you know, that deep sadness can hit you. And that is part of grief. And one of the ways I deal with that is to meditate on God's promises. I love Philippians 4, 6, and 7, which says, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And then eventually we get to acceptance. And I also think appreciation. I heard that from you all, that we, you know, you begin to move forward. Those that have passed want you to be happy. They want you to have those memories, and you accept the loss of them not being around anymore, but you also appreciate, and you tell those great stories, and you bring up their memories and share that with other people. And that's all part of grieving. I also think a memorial service just is this gentle nudge and reminding us about the fact of our own mortality, and that we need to be prepared for that. It can be simple, practical ways, like just making sure that your spouse, you know, knows all the details and where all the paperwork is and how to access everything. Or it can be those bigger questions in life, those questions about heaven and life after death. And so I just encourage you to you know, remember that as well, that this kind of a service nudges us and reminds us of our own mortality. We all, none of us live forever on this world. So I just wanted to have you know that God loved each of these Rotarians, that he loved them and loves you. And it is a remarkable love that he offers us. It's unconditional, it's sacrificial. Some have even described it as reckless. And I encourage you to seek comfort in the love of God. And I personally am a Christian, and so I strongly believe in heaven. And so we have a video that points us to that idea of heaven. It's hopefully we'll get to watch this. It's a song called I Can Only Imagine by Mercy Me. So I hope you find it helpful.
I can only imagine what it will be like when I walk by your side. I can only imagine what my eyes will see when your face is before me. I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus, or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence, or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine when that day comes and I find myself standing in the sun. I can only imagine when all I would do is forever forever worship you. I can only imagine, yeah. I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine when all I would do is forever, forever worship you. I can only imagine.
And why don't I, whatever your worldview is, most people do look forward to an idea of heaven, a place without disease, a place without pain, difficulty, or death. And so let me just close this in prayer, and I'll turn it back to Andre. Dear God, I just thank you for this time together. I thank you for the incredible lives that have been lived among us. I thank you for the laughter, for the impact, for the service. I thank you for all that that these folks have done, for the incredible influence they have had in the lives of young people, in fighting disease, through Rotary, through peace, and just lifting up their fellow man. And Lord, we know that every person is valuable. Every person matters. And these individuals live that out. We thank you for their impact, and we thank you for their kindness. We thank you for the honor of knowing the ones that we know. I just thank you for this time together, and I just bring it to a close. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Derek. What an inspiring service this has been. I would again like to thank each of you who took time to join us today. Thank you, Pastor Derek and Lieutenant Governor Rosie, for making today possible. The stories about each Rotarian has lifted us up. The motto this year for Rotary has been Rotary Connects the World. For many of us that have been longtime members of Rotary, we view Rotary as a family. The friendships and fellowship we enjoy as Rotarians enriches our lives, as these Rotarians have enriched their Rotary friends, their Rotary clubs, and their communities. We all know that the Rotarians we recognize today are smiling down upon us and continue to watch the work of Rotary bring lives in communities throughout Alaska and the world. This ends our service today. Have a great summer. This is officially my last official act as district governor. And it's just been a great year, and it's been very important for me that we had this service today honoring the lives of Rotarians who have passed. I hope that the district will continue to make this a priority. Thank you again.
Thanks, Andre. It's Mary.
Thank you, Andre.
Thank you, Andre.
Thanks, everyone. Nicely done.
So long, Andre. I know you're not going too many places, but we'll see you. Oh, hey.
Okay, everybody have a great summer. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Andre.
Thank you, Andre.
Thank you. Thank you very much.